What if the problem with AI in customer experience isn't about technology at all, but how we're using it? Well, today I'm going to be joined by the CEO and co-founder of a company called TheyDo. And they are a journey management platform that's helping enterprise companies from Ford to Atlassian and Home Depot, some big names there, and helping them rethink how they operate in an AI-powered world. I think this is important because at a time where so many business leaders are doubling down on AI to gain insight, my guest today is going to argue that it's often making things worse, creating more data, more dashboards, and more confusion. So today we're going to explore why personalization still fails at scale, what's missing in most CX strategies, and how a journey-centric approach can align siloed teams, streamline data, and actually start improving decision-making. I also want to touch on the fact that TheyDo has recently had a $30 million Series B round. I want to learn more about how they're using that to build out AI features that support, not replace, the human side of the customer experience. So if your organization is stuck between data overload and an underwhelming customer journey, this episode hopes to offer you a fresh way forward. So what could your business look like if you stopped optimizing isolated touch points and started thinking like your customer? Let's find out. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me today, Neil. I'm Jochem van der Veer. I'm the co-founder, one of the co-founders, and the CEO of a company called TheyDo. And we're basically fixing customer centricity at the enterprise level because so many teams, so many silos, quote unquote, exist, and data is disjointed, decision making is disjointed, and ultimately the customer suffers, and the business suffers as well because they're not creating as much value as they can for both parties involved. And it's been a problem for decades, and I've been trying to solve it in many different forms. But today we're a product company tailored towards the enterprise to really fix this problem for once and for all.
And I think that problem needs solving now more than ever because there's so much hype and talk around artificial intelligence. But of course, AI offers no value without good data. And we really do need to remove those data silos. And just to kick off, for everyone hearing about TheyDo for the first time, tell me more about it and how you're helping companies rethink their customer experience in today's AI-driven environment, and if you have solved that problem of removing silos.
We're not removing silos. I think that's a big misconception, right? Silos have a purpose. They are there for accountability, for scalability, for having people within certain constraints operate at their best and design processes at their best. The problem is that because we only care about our KPIs and optimizing for that silo, we don't even know that there is other silos, right? That's the problem. So you got to connect the dots across them. And data from the customer coming in is collected in the silo. So it's stuck there. So we need to have something that is cross-silo, cross-functional to get that visibility, but also have that shared context. So for years, we've known this thing called the journey map to do that, but it used to be like the static artifact that is hanging on the wall. So we figured, hang on a minute, it's basically like a data model, right? If you put all the data in, not only like the feedback, the qualitative survey responses, the research that you're doing, the calls that you're getting from your sales or support team, like analyzing those, but also your structured metrics, like what is the performance of the business and how are we looking at it from the customer's perspective. So if you combine all of that into the journey, but make it so that it's connected to the systems and the teams that are working, all of a sudden you have something that we call journey management, which is a way to align across teams and have your data in near real time, creating this dynamic system. So we use the idea of a journey, and we're helping teams to employ journey management as a way to cross basically the silos and to make that common decision making for the customer and the business possible.
And I think it's important to highlight that you've worked with some pretty big brands out there, everything from Ford to Atlassian to Home Depot. So I'm curious, what are the common challenges that all these big companies are facing as they try to personalize experiences at scale?
Yeah, so the single thing is that it's at scale, right? I mean, if you're a 50-person company, you don't need all these fancy tools. You can probably jot it down on a whiteboard and have some data, and then you're good. I'm obviously like exaggerating a little bit. But as you grow, like one of our biggest customers, they can't even run on things like Salesforce because it's just not big enough for their size. So they have to build custom CRM solutions to even make it work. So you can imagine the data and the possible miscommunications between the different teams at that scale. So the bigger the company, the harder it gets to stay aligned and to truly have a shared context. And if you don't have the right tooling in place, that will fail. So what we've seen in personalization, to answer your question specifically, is that we've seen journey orchestration as one of the ways to do that. But in real cases, it's much like marketing automation. So we're sending Neil an email and we're sending Jochem an SMS. And basically, we're sending him an offer for a discount and we're giving you a voucher. And I'm simplifying things a lot, but that's the level of sophistication that we can get to because the data foundation isn't there, because the dots are not joined. So at a legacy enterprise or traditional enterprise, it's even worse because they are sometimes run on systems that are built before the 2000s. And sometimes the data isn't even available. So fast forward to today with AI, recording, transcribing, capturing way more than ever before. Having that foundation is essential and all these companies are investing. But because they have the data already, be it it's stuck in all these different silos, they are having an advantage because it is something that they can unlock today. And not only to drive personalization, but to actually drive customer centricity across these teams to basically hit the mark for their customers by developing something they truly want.
And let's talk about that AI paradox, because we started the conversation talking about that AI is only as powerful as the data that we put in, but many leaders are also investing heavily in AI, but a significant number of them are feeling overwhelmed by the data that it can generate too. So what's going wrong here?
So AI is like generic, right? It's not a tool. It's more like a mindset. You can apply it to everything and all data all at once. But if you think about the different parts of the business where you're applying it, you have a few lenses that you can put onto it. So one is the customer facing. Like what is innovation today in AI that is actually customer facing? What we're seeing is that there's the obvious parts in the customer contact center, right? Where there's routing that's done by AI, where there is agents that are replaced by AI, where there is bots that are used actually to give you useful information, where's my order, and to really handle the basics of customer support. So that's the obvious one where AI can be helpful if you have a structured set of processes and ways of working, which most contact centers have. So that's a great place where AI is useful today already. What we're seeing is that we're developing AI for replacing humans in those tasks, but I haven't seen a business truly adopt it. You saw the Klarna headlines, right? We're replacing everyone in the customer service team with AI, and now they are rehiring people because there's still all these nuanced edge cases, and talking to a human being is essential. Some of our biggest enterprise customers, 10% of their calls are just people that are lonely and want to talk to a human being. I'm not kidding. It's that large of a volume. So there is this human element that we can't replace yet. But if we look at the other part of AI, whether it's helping our teams to be more productive, you can look at two lenses. One is on the individual. It's like, okay, look at my own work. Like I'm writing better, faster, getting my first drafts there, reviewing content at much more speed. So I can do more with less time, or within the same time, I can achieve a lot more than before. So that's on the individual. But what's more interesting is how can it help collaboration, coordination across the different parts of the organization that used to be relying on meetings, on interactions, on writing messages to one another? How can I help there? So I think like having that shared experience help with AI is the third lens, which I think where we'll see tremendous innovation. So on all these different things, data is important, but it's not the one thing that is important. It is also about thinking differently about how we work together as human beings and what truly matters and how we can actually change the way we work, not necessarily make it more productive or faster.
And I'm curious, in your view, from everything that you've seen and heard and all those conversations with enterprises of all sizes around the world, why is it so many personalization efforts are still missing the mark, despite the wealth of customer data available? What's going wrong there?
That is a data issue. Yeah. So if I don't know that you've been on my website buying a let's call it an air fryer. You've bought an air fryer, right? And you go to Insta the next day, you'll still see ads for air fryers, right? You'll still see brands trying to get you buy an air fryer because we are tracking you here and we're not really understanding that you bought it. Because this is a very known problem, that because in some systems you're a customer ID, in others you are an identified user, and we don't have a good way to merge that data. So that will always be a problem as long as you have like third-party vendors and first-party data. So that's one part of the problem. And the other one is that, back to the siloism, it's like marketing has this piece of the journey, and service has that piece of the journey, and CRO team has this piece of the journey, the digital team has that piece of the journey. So everyone is optimizing for their own piece, but they're not looking left and right what the rest of the teams are doing. And chances are, well, facts probably are that they're counterproductive in many ways, right? So even if we have the data, it's not used because it's stuck. I mean, our data shows that only 45% of business data is actually used because some is stuck, some is not considered valuable or inaccessible, or even like due to compliance or legal reason, not even accessible by default. So there's a lot of data that is actually necessary to pull it off, and it's not connected because of the silos or because it's stuck and not accessible.
And if we look at the hidden costs of a bad customer experience, what that looks like in terms of loss of value or ROI, what does it look like in real business terms? And how can companies recognize those warning signs a little earlier so they can act or be more proactive than reactive?
So the typical customer experience function used to be backward looking, right? We're measuring NPS, we're measuring satisfaction, we're looking to survey people to tell us what they thought of an experience, right? To basically gauge their feelings, their emotions. And it's great, but it's backward looking. And we're always after the matter looking at what was happening. So because the time from data to insight was such long or postponed in many organizations, sometimes we're looking at months, right? The data was collected, but before we analyzed it, we're 3 months later. So is that insight still relevant? Should we still act on it? We don't know. We probably do it. So what we're seeing companies shift to is, what are the leading indicators for experience, right? What are the behaviors people are showing in the early stage of the engagement with us that we can ultimately trace back to what led them to stay as a customer or upsell again? And what are those experiences they had early on, we can do more of, that we can look at. And this sounds very nice and broad, but in reality, it's the closer you can get to the feedback that people are giving you, whether it's observed or actually shared with you, the faster you can turn that into something that the team can act on strategically. You're walking more in lockstep with your customer. So, and because of AI, the analytics capabilities are almost out of the box in many teams and many software platforms, that we can actually start walking in lockstep with our customer, and we don't have this like 3 to 6 months latency between it, or even longer and worse.
And from the outside looking in, journey-centric thinking really does seem to be core to your platform. So why is it so powerful, do you think? And how does it help cut through the noise and drive through better decisions and help make those data-driven decisions too?
Because if the team collects the data they need to optimize for their KPI, they will do that on a very narrow slice of what they're looking for, and they're not aware of what is going on before or after people have an interaction with, let's say, the product or the service that they're responsible for, or the piece of content that they're delivering. But if you think about, what is the customer trying to achieve? When do they think they've achieved something, right? And if you get a mortgage, that's like a long experience, a long journey, multiple sections with gaps in between. But ultimately, your goal is to buy that house. But one of the milestones is obviously finding a bank or signing a contract with a bank that will do all the work to get your mortgage. So that is a clear milestone of like finding and selecting the bank and getting approved by the bank. So that's a typical journey, if you look at it from the bank's perspective, that cuts across the account team, that cuts across the digital team, that cuts across the mortgages team. So if they would all optimize for their local, whatever it is, they would not think about like, hey, what is the customer trying to achieve? When is there a milestone in their mind happening in that journey, in that experience, that we should be helping them to achieve that? What is it? Faster or better or in a more meaningful way, so that we're out competing the rest of the market. And when you start thinking about that, then it becomes a shared responsibility and not necessarily, oh, I'm just optimizing the amount of leads we're getting for people filling in the calculator on the website to see if we're even able to give them a mortgage, and then they will come through our funnel. And marketing says, no, done my work, did 30,000 a month. That was my target. There you go. But then the account team says, but they're crap, right? It's the typical problem. Had they had the shared journey with a clear outcome of people selecting the bank and ultimately filing the paperwork to even get the ball rolling, well, then maybe something different would have happened. And that's the power of thinking in journeys. But no one likes to look at a digital whiteboard with a bunch of Post-its on it together. So we got to have a more data-centric approach to it. So yes, journey thinking is central to our platform, but really contextualizing the data across these teams is what it's all about.
And before you came on the podcast, I was doing a little research on TheyDo and quickly learned that you've recently closed a $30 million Series B round. So what does this funding unlock for your roadmap? What's next for the platform? Is there anything you can share around there?
Yeah, sure. So it's twofold, right? One is that we're a European-based company. We started here in Amsterdam, but we have a global customer base, and we're growing fastest in the US. It's obvious there's customer centricity and customer experience is like core of the strategy of any serious business. Everyone in the Fortune 500 has this as one of the key pillars in their core strategy. So there is a lot of investment made in these areas for the business and their teams. So they need software to execute that. But if you can imagine that an enterprise company has all these different systems and all these different teams that need to collaborate at scale, we kind of need a big team to build all the capabilities. Just to give you a sense, like we just finished the roles and permissions, which is like table stakes, right? But for a scaling company like ours, that's a full product team for a few cycles on the problem, fixing it, building it. And it needs to happen. It doesn't come out of the box somewhere. So you got to build it. And with that funding, we can do other things in parallel, like building the fancy AI capabilities that are actually making this all possible. So a lot of the funding is going into R&D and getting boots on the ground in US, being with our customers and helping them solve these problems.
And one of the things I always try and do on this podcast every day is give everybody listening a valuable takeaway. So for that business leader or company that is currently feeling stuck between data overload and an underwhelming customer experience, what are the best ways to start making meaningful changes? Any tips or advice you can share around that?
Yeah, so many that start on this, what we call journey management path or journey of journey management, is that they look at what they already have, right? And they have tons of these journey maps and parts of the blueprints of the experience figured out. And they go and say, okay, well, great. Well, let's centralize all of that. And then we're there, right? Mapping was never the end game, right? It's the beginning. So bringing some of that in is helpful. Half of that, maybe more, is probably outdated. And the mistake people then make is say, okay, we're going to map it all out. We're going to get this complete picture of the customer experience, all the nooks and crannies, all the layers, right? The macro, the micro journeys, everything needs to be in place. And that can take them a year, sometimes two, depending on the size of the company. And then at the end, we'll look back and say like, okay, we know more, but we haven't moved the needle. So the key to change is say like, where in our strategy, from the company's perspective, are we focused on this here? Okay, where are the metrics that matter for that? And that's totally fine if that's a specific silo-based metric, but where is the problem for a business? How can we know if we move the needle for the business, it's going to work? And then you start to look at, okay, what are our customers telling? What are the journeys? What are the experiences that are right here around it? And that's the place to start, because they will give you insight on what their problems are in the context of what the business is trying to achieve. And that's where the biggest win can be made on the short term, where we look at where's the business problem that maps onto the customer problems that we already know. And many teams start with we're going to map it all out, or we're going to only focus on what the customer problems are. And they completely forget they are in business, and it should ultimately benefit both sides. So that is something that I would say that is a common mistake, and a great way to start if you are overcoming that.
Such a valuable takeaway for everyone listening. So thank you so much for sharing your invaluable insights with me today. And after 10 years and 3,500 interviews, we've got quite a Rolodex here. So I'm going to see if there's something that we can do for you. If I was to ask you, who would be the person that you would like to have a breakfast or lunch with? Who would that person be and why? And let's see if we can try and manifest something together today.
That's fine. So I wasn't expecting this question, but what I would say is that ultimately we are people, right? And when I look at who I would love to have breakfast with every day, it's just as simple as my kids and my wife. It's just as simple as that. Because I could say like, oh, it would be great to have Trump on, right? They're doing fantastic with Doge, but everyone seems to hate it or love it. Would they be a bit more customer-centric, a bit more citizen-centric? Would they put the emphasis on the experience that people are having, whether it's with the DMV or whether it's like with their actual jobs? It doesn't matter, but like, would they take that perspective in? It would be so much easier. It would be so much better. So that will be a great place to go to. But if you had me to choose, like, I would still have breakfast with my kids and my wife.
Oh man, what a beautiful answer. And the first answer like that in 3,500 interviews. And I think it's so refreshing to hear that, I think we're all chasing various different things and often lose sight of the fact, or risk losing sight of the fact that, hey, what are we doing all this for? It's for our partner, it's for our kids, etc. So thank you for that. And for everyone listening, if they maybe want to find out more about TheyDo, about some of the things that we talked about today, where would you like to point them to find more information?
So if you're interested in doing this work with your company, go to theydo.com. But I am on LinkedIn, and I'm personally answering all the DMs I'm getting, unless you're an annoying recruiter or a sales rep that have nothing of value to add. But if you're genuinely interested, I am answering all my DMs. So please go to LinkedIn, find me there, or check out theydo.com.
Awesome. Well, I'll add a link so people can find you nice and easily, and maybe continue that conversation around the AI paradox, where personalization is failing, and the hidden cost of bad customer experience as well. I'd love to keep this conversation going. So I invite people to contact myself and you indeed, and let's see where this leads. But more than anything, just thank you for shining a light on this today and starting the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it, and all the work you've done. Such an incredible ride. So keep doing what you do, Neil.
I think we often talk about AI and customer experience in isolation. But I think my guest showed me today that the real transformation happens when you actually zoom right out. Not every department needs to be merged or restructured, but they do need a shared view of that entire customer journey. So instead of drowning in siloed data and reactive metrics, businesses have a fighting chance to align around shared goals, proactive decisions, and experiences that actually matter to the people that they're serving. It's not about chasing every shiny new AI tool. It's about making sure that these tools are solving the right problems. So that leaves me with one final question for everybody listening. Are you using AI to amplify clarity, or just adding to the noise? Love to hear your thoughts on this. techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, just @Neil C. Hughes. Keep those messages coming in. I'll return again with another episode, probably by the time you hit refresh on your podcast feed. So hopefully I will speak with you all then. Bye for now.